listen to broadcasts, go to concerts, buy CDs, and until I could start to understand what was going on. Then I thought, oh, this is really great. And I want to stay until I can sort of get it, sort of start to get good.
If you have not heard the music of the Gayageum, the Korean traditional string instrument, you have not heard the music that has captivated and represented Korea and Koreans for thousands of years. And not just Koreans. More than 30 years ago, its unique sound captivated our globalists today. And now Jocelyn Clark from Alaska has taken on the Gayageum, is becoming a master herself, spreading its beauty both outside and inside Korea. Welcome, Jocelyn, to The Globalist.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
I think it's worth sort of starting in the beginning. Now, your family name is Clark, but your Korean name is Jocelyn. Family is Jo, and you say Jo from Alaska. So how does a Jocelyn Clark from Alaska become Jocelyn, a Gayageum master in Korea?
A master might be going a little too far, but I've been studying for 30 years. I started across the street in 1992 with a scholarship from the National Gugak Center. Mm-hmm. That time it was called the National Classic Music Center in English. I started music when I was a kid. I played the violin at age 3, piano age 4, played the flute, clarinet, oboe in the university orchestra, and then I discovered the Koto, Japanese Koto, at my university, which was famous for ethnomusicology, which I had never heard of at the time. But as soon as I played this instrument, I fell in love with it. The first note was so wonderful. I thought, oh, this sound is my sound. Yeah. And then, of course, I heard that there was this instrument in Korea that was similar, the Gayageum. I got a scholarship directed from the director of the Kuni Gugakwan, and I started studying then right out of college in 1992. 92. So that was 31 years ago. 31 years ago.
So your first attraction to Asian instrumental was in Japan, then China, and then you came to Korea.
Yeah.
So you made this journey, and now you're in Korea. How did you feel about your step into Gayageum? Did it feel like it's already something you already knew, or was it entirely different?
Well, in my own head, I thought I already knew it, and I already thought I was very arrogant, young American girl, and I found that Korea was immediately not any place I knew.
Yeah, very different.
I thought I sort of understood certain things about East Asia from living in China, Japan, but Korea was a very different place. I had a really difficult time trying to find a place to live. And then Colleen Park, who used to work here at Arirang TV, she helped me to get a hasuk, a boarding house. And so I lived next to her for several years, and she sort of showed me the ropes of Korea. But the Gayageum itself, the modes and the rhythms are so different from Japan, China, and the West that, I couldn't really understand as my finger was bleeding. you know.
We were talking about that earlier. I mean, playing the Gayageum involves brutalizing your fingertips.
in the beginning, so I thought, when my teacher took me to go get a Gayageum, and then I thought I'm going to practice really hard.
Oh my goodness.
After 5 minutes, there was blood. So,
Everywhere.
You couldn't practice hard if you wanted to. You had to build up the calluses first.
But here you are, a young, accomplished woman who's seen other parts of Asia. You are an accomplished musician on your own, even in the Western instruments. Why stay for Gayageum? I mean, why go through all this?
Well, as I said in the beginning, I didn't understand, but I had a scholarship. So after 1 year of sort of, okay, why don't I understand this? What's wrong with me? I started to, go to all the concerts, and there weren't that many at that time, but now there's many more. Listen to broadcasts, go to concerts, buy CDs, and until I could start to understand what was going on. And once I did that, then I thought, oh, this is really great. This is really great. And I want to stay until I can sort of get it, sort of start to get good. And it's taken until now that I'm starting to get good.
Okay, I mean, from a non-Korean perspective, you've approached it from someone who's already a musician. How is Korea's Gayageum different?
It's not Korea's 가야금. It's the sounds from 전라도, right? We're not studying 경기 music. We're studying the 전라 소리. So it's the idea of 소리. And understanding the subtleties of that takes, well, it's taken me till now. But if you approach it like Western music, then you're going to be producing Western music, even if it's got this melody or that 장단.
Yeah.
It still doesn't sound like Korean music. And it takes a long time to get rid of your accent. And then it's not just me. It's also the other students. We're trying to, what is our teacher talking about? She doesn't change what she says. She waits for us to understand what she says finally. And now I'm starting to understand. And that's really exciting.
So, but when you say accent, you're not talking about...
It's
a different type of accent you're talking about, right?
A musical accent.
A musical accent.
So, for instance, there's 3 main modes in Korean music, in Cholla style music. So there's Gyemyeonjo, which is equivalent socially, let's say, to minor mode in Western music.
The more sadder
sad music. And then Byungjo and Ujo, which would be closer to major mode.
Yeah.
But if you think of it that way, then you start to play Gyemyeon mode as if it's minor mode. And then the intonation, I guess, the
yeah.
It's not the same, but it's close. And it's close enough that if you're trained in Western music, you're automatically, it's like having an accent in Korean or in a foreign language. If you could hear it, you wouldn't make a funny accent, right?
Maybe the way for us to understand is Gayageum is, of course, the instrument, but you have to master both the Gayageum and the singing because it sort of goes hand in hand. So if you could sort of let us hear what you think is different from a musical patterns of Korean music versus what it might be if it were thinking about a Western.
Yeah, the problem is I'm not a good singer.
Oh, no.
I'm not a good singer. But it has to do with is sort of the energy that comes through the rhythm patterns at certain points. So where's the 강, where's the 약, where's the where's the yang? Of course, everybody knows saranga, right?
Saranga, yes. But show us through saranga. This is the love theme in saranga, in 춘향전, which is like the Romeo and Juliet of Korea.
사랑 사랑 내 사랑이야 둥둥 네가 내 사랑이지야 이리 보아도 내 사랑 저리 보아도 내 사랑.
So in that little phrase, there are a lot of, you're going up and down a lot. And we talk about the rhythm, the beat.
The beat is also a different way of thinking it. So in Western music, where usually everything's in 4/4, right? So it's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Even if we have a waltz, right? It's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And Korea is 1, 2, 3. The accents are in a different place, depending on the rhythm pattern. So I think for audiences, if they're trying to figure out how to listen to Korean music, the most interesting thing to know is most of the rhythm patterns used are 12-beat rhythm patterns, and they have accents on the 1 and the 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And the 1 always has 2 hands with the rhythm, and the 9 also has one hand with the rhythm, so you can tell if it's a 1 or a 9. These are little points that I never got told either.
That's true.
I was like, what's going on?
What's going on? But not understanding this is very difficult for, Koreans and non-Koreans alike to really appreciate Korean music.
I don't think it's hard to understand, but nobody gets taught it. Nobody tells people that, right?
Why do you think that is?
Because I think one of the reasons is because, Koreans are very interested in class, right? Especially the coming of Western education, right? With the missionary-led Western education. So my school is the oldest school in Korea. Hakdang. So, our school started in 1885. It was the first sort of Western education. And people were happy about it because, it offered Nang Yangban class a chance to get schooled in something.
So the middle to lower class were given the education.
Soon became the high class, right? And, hospitals as well, all this came in through Western missionaries. So what does Western missionaries bring with them? Western music. And all that gets connected to high class. There's this class divide. Why do you play cello?
It was easier to learn the cello than it was.
You mean in terms of access?
Availability,
access. Right.
You had more cello classes than Gayageum classes, for example.
But to play the cello is very high class in Korea. And to play the Gayageum is
not so.
Getting to be.
The other element is that major-minor aspect of Korean music as well. But I did hear a previous interview in which you talked about there being a sadness overall to Korean music.
I think this is a really interesting topic because when I first started studying Korean, this idea of Han was, I already talked about Han. And, the student movements had just sort of ended in some kind of tragedy. And, when I first came to study at the 국립국악관, I couldn't speak Korean very well. But I took the public class, and all the 할머니들, all the grandmothers, they were speaking Japanese amongst themselves. And I spoke Japanese, so I fit in very well there, and was just speaking Japanese all the time.
All the old generation spoke Japanese because
it was their first language.
They lived through the Japanese occupation.
They grew up speaking Japanese, and the other interesting thing is that all my teachers lived in Japan, so I learned Gugak in Japanese to begin with. So this idea of Han was very,
the soulfulness,
theme,
the sadness.
80s, 90s, right? But I think that it's completely switched over to Hung as a sort of essential, if we can even say that, Korean aesthetic that's taken over Han. And in the music as well, when we have both. We have, through the different modes, we have sad mode, the Gyemyeonjo, and then this, especially through the faster changdan, the faster rhythm patterns, then we have a lot of Hung. So it starts out very slow, but then when I play, I'm nervous at first for the first 5-10 minutes, and then I just get lost in the rhythm and the modes, and then I'm just writing the rhythm pattern. It's a conversation between the drum, and it gets going faster and faster and faster, and it always ends in Hung.
Yeah. So Han is sort of the sadness and soulfulness, which is it a slower tempo?
You can play Gyemyeonjo in a fast tempo too, but with the slow tempo, you've got really something very emotive. In Pansori, we have, there's I don't know if you've seen this movie, 서편제.
Yes.
Right, so 서편제 is this sort of lots of Han-filled style of Pansori. It's filled with more singing style, is more like, 아이고 아버지, goes the trails off, this sort of very sad. But in 동병제, for instance, we have it's sort of much more male sounding, a lot more ujo in the mode. So
it goes faster?
Not faster, but it's sort of cut off. So it's like, 아이고 아버지.
The same 아이고 아버지 can sound that.
아이고 아버지.
That would be the
아이고
Han.
아버지. 당대 is a different mode. So it depends on which sort of school you're singing in. Different schools of Sanjo also emphasize different modes depending on who the teacher was, what the history of that is. So there's lots of Han in the music, but there's also lots of Hung.
Yeah.
And there's also some jokes.
So we're talking, there's sadness, but there's also excitement, joy in Korean music. You've studied Korean music for a very long time, and you've sort of approached it from someone who's not Korean. So what does Korean music say about Koreans, do you think?
This idea of Pungnu, right?
The Chinese character of the wind and the...
Flowing.
The flow.
Current, maybe? Yeah. This word Pungnu very specifically points to that, but it also means this whole punigi, right? This whole atmosphere of letting go, but enjoying stuff through music, having a drink together, and creating community in some way. And a lot of Korean music, it's something that, if you're trained in it, everybody can join in, and it's very improvisational. So anybody can join, and people do. So there's, get out you have some food, you have some drink, and then people start playing, and then it goes on all night. And this is really sort of a beautiful way to spend time together and create community. Even we see this in old Chinese texts, Koreans like to spend time together playing music.
Yes.
And also this idea of rhythm, because the Chinese always commented in their text about, Koreans love to slap their knees.
The beat, the rhythm and beat.
And this rhythm comes through in the classic texts of Chinese literature. So I think that I always thought that was really interesting. And when I first moved to Korea, Park College and Koreans really love music. It's a musical country. I thought, oh, really? Compared to where? But now I really agree with her on that. It's a very musical and very fun-loving, not in a stupid way, but in a respectful, communal way. Not communal, but in something that builds community.
Yeah. Someone was saying that is sort of a way of expression for Korea, which is sort of understood as a form of expression, whereas other areas it's either a performance or something that is different.
Korean music has this aspect of 함께 합시다. Even when I first came to Korea, I was really shocked because everybody's yelling from the audience. I'm like, what's going on here? Shh. Shh. And it was like, 저시고 from the audience. I'm like, what is going on?
That has to come from the audience in order for the performance.
It's disappeared now. You can't even hear it in Cheonju. But when I first came to Korea, there was a lot of more audience participation. And that first, in the beginning, it shocked me because I come from a classical music background. But soon I found out, oh, okay, what's this? And now that I'm someone that's on the stage, when people shout out to me, I can't even tell you how much energy that gives you.
Really?
It fills you with energy and this idea of hung, not just han, but hung. And then you really want to play well. You want to play for this audience that's on your side and thinking along and feeling along with you. There used to be something called the Sanjo Festival in Cheonju. So one of the things that we did was a street performance. I was, it's kind of a beginner still then, but sang saranga for the street. And all those people knew all the words of the song. Yeah. So they all sang along with me the whole song. And it was just such a beautiful, exciting moment for me. And then I played sanjo, short sanjo in Cheonju, and I was a beginner. So, of course, when you're a beginner, the audience gives you even more encouragement because they're like, oh, you suck, so play harder. This was also really exciting for me as a beginning player too. It relaxed me and made me feel that the audience is on my side, and we were having an experience together. I was playing, but they were playing along with me in their heads, and this is disappearing in Korea.
It is. I mean, I hope that you can bring it back because I love it. I love it. Well, great. I'll be in the audience and I'll start. You talked about the audience participation. In the West, the audience shows its approval by clapping, right? There is a clap, but there's also the singing along, there's the helping the melody along. It's almost as if a fan group becomes part of the performance.
Yeah, I think you're right. Pop music is a little bit of a different genre, so I don't think it's unusual in pop music for things to go that way. But if you're thinking about the Bach cello concertos, you're not going to have people yelling out from the audience, right? So it's having that kind of energy in a totally different genre, which is a little bit unique, I think.
Yeah. The other aspect that I was really interested in hearing from you, because you've talked about this before, and you mentioned it today as well, the part of your mission is not so much maybe spreading Korean music outside of Korea, but spreading Korean music within Korea.
What foreign audience really wants to see a foreigner playing Gayageum? They don't. They want to see an authentic experience. They want to have an authentic experience, right? So I don't think my role is to bring the Gayageum to the Western audience. In some ways, I've played for various audiences who didn't know what to do with me because they thought Gugak is really low class, but then here's this professor who has a high class education and is playing this instrument. I mean, they don't even know if they some people, they want to touch me or something. And they're, oh, normally we can touch these Gayageum playing girls, but can we touch her or not? All these kind of questions come into play. But for people who are actually aficionados of music and not just this idea of drinking and having Gozheng along for the ride, it offers a new face. And they're looking again at Gugak. Oh, it's not just low-class countryside girl here. So what's she doing this? And does Gugak have some kind of value? This is kind of an old way of looking at it because Gugak has a whole sort of resurgence, especially during COVID. There's all this sort of digital age coming to the Gugak world. There's the whole different genres, new genres emerging, like Chosun pop has come out during the COVID times. There's a lot more fusion happening, so that the Gugak is sort of entering the pop space on its own terms. And I think all these things are really great as long as we also keep the traditional stuff alive at the same time, because there needs to be a well to come back to.
Yeah, I mean, the very fact that you as someone who had a lot of choice and knows very different varieties of music, have chosen Korean traditional music to really focus on, in itself maybe gives people second thoughts about the value of Korean traditional music.
I mean, it shouldn't actually mean anything that I'm playing. I'm within the Gugak world, I'm like down here. But for a lot of people, it represents something that they hadn't expected. So it makes them take a second look at Gugak or reorder its place in Korean society in their own minds, which I think is hopefully a good thing.
Yeah, I think so, especially when you're thinking about Gugak for tomorrow, for a future.
In the class that you mentioned, I mean, the first lesson is what is Gugak? This word, right? I mean, if we say Gugak, it's a national music, right? It's a music that represents the nation. People don't even know what this word means, really.
For us, it's identified with traditional Korean music.
But not for the kids.
Yeah.
It's not. If a Gayageum plays Pachelbel's canon, it's Gugak for them. It has to do with materials much more, and also umsek, this sort of timbre.
Yeah.
If it has a Gugak timbre, then it's Gugak. So then we get into this question about national branding, national identity, all these sort of questions like how do we define things? What do we want to have as our national identity? Can we define it? Is it bottom up? Is it top down? How do we get to the world with? So people say, well, can you bring Gugak to the world? And I'm like, well, we haven't even. It's not popular in Korea, so how are we going to bring it to the world?
That's true.
Start at home.
That's true. Start at home, and I think on that level you have a very big role to play, and you are playing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And that's it for me. I'll be back next week with another globalist who's putting Korea on the map. Sunji out.